Welcome back, everyone. In part one, I discussed the introduction, rationale, the statement of the problem, teacher profile, and the curriculum goal. In this part, I will take you through the 5 units that I've created. Unit 1, nonverbal behavior. This is very important, and this is usually the progression of any theater piece or any theater training or acting training. So you begin with nonverbal behavior, understanding how people act or understanding gestures. What does a certain gesture mean? And later on, when you're doing impromptu, you could match that gesture to a saying. If I say everything's all right, maybe adding a thumbs up will give it more, will be more believable, and will give it more life. It will be more authentic. And finally, untie the knot and raise the flags, or two non-behavioral exercises that I've used in the past. Untied knot is students holding hands and trying to untangle themselves from a circle. Raising the flag is a collaborative experience. So you have 2 groups of students. One group is raising the flags, as you can see in the picture here, and the other group is maybe pulling the rope to raise the flag. I've seen this done with a broomstick. I've also seen it done with an imaginary flagpole. And this will help the students work collaboratively without using any words. Unit 2 is improvisation. This is very important. This is the part where they get to use the language they know and apply it to a certain situation. They can be themselves, or they can create another simple character, and they create a situation, and without a script, they start reacting in groups, or they start acting in pairs and start using language and try to negotiate a situation, or try to negotiate their position in the situation. I've also included a YouTube video which is very informative. I've used it before, and it's 10 ways to practice improvisation. I suggest we start with the video so that the students know what is expected of them and how to behave in an improvisational exercise. The next part, characterization. So students are either can choose a monologue or given a monologue, but it has to be something they can relate to, something very familiar to them. You won't want these intermediate high school students to play an old man or an old woman, or a divorcee. These are not characters they're familiar with. But high school students, or maybe they can play their teacher or their mother. That's something that they're familiar with. The more familiar they are with it, the better the monologue will be, the better the character will be. So in the monologues that they choose, they start creating a character. They're given a graphic organizer, where they start plotting out all the things that a character needs. Because in the next unit, I've included 2 full lessons in this unit. One is character building, and one is character traits. And there are graphic organizers to go with the lessons so that the students know what to look for in each monologue and each character. In this unit, there are 5 lessons, and I flushed out each lesson because I think this is probably, without teacher does not have a theater background, this is probably the most difficult lesson or the most difficult unit. So I created full lessons for each one. The first one is 5 steps, getting to know in preparation for building a monologue. They need to know who you are you talking to, why are you talking to, and who are you talking about, and finally, what is the event? Are you at a bowling alley? Are you at a pizza parlor? Are you stuck in an elevator? What is happening? Next lesson, the beginning. This is very important. This is what's called the hook. So this is where you captivate the audience and then make them want to know more. The second one is the middle. I'm sorry, the third one is the middle. The middle is a turning point, as it's called in theater. It's very important that the monologue, that the character in the monologue have more than one emotion. If he sustains one emotion throughout, then it will be boring. There has to be a change somewhere in the middle where he displays a different kind of emotion. This makes it believable, it captivates the audience, and it makes it very interesting. The end, the button. This is what's called the button, and it's literally like a button on a shirt. You tie it up nice and tight so it doesn't come open, and this ties everything up at the end. It could be in 1 line, it could be in 2 lines, but it's necessary to have a clear-cut ending. We don't want to leave the audience with saying, what just happened? Is it over? If you ask a question at the beginning, you answer it at the end. If you propose a problem at the beginning, you resolve it at the end. So And it sort of follows an arc, literally like a bridge. So there's a beginning, a middle, and an end. So on a bridge, you start at the beginning, you're in the middle, at the top of the water, and finally you're back down. And that's what a monologue should do. And that's like everything, like a book, a play, a movie, a TV show. And finally, the last lesson is character needs and wants. It's important to know the difference between the two, as I explained in my project proposal. And it's also important that the character have strong needs and strong wants. This is going to make their monologue interesting. Unit 5, the monologues. In the first lesson, I talk about stage direction. Stage directions are very important to include in a monologue. For example, if a character says, I went to the window and looked out, then the character has to go to the window. The actor has to go to the window and look out. Or calling my sister now, you have to pretend like you're calling your sister. I mean, we used to do this when I was in theater school, but I guess it's more like this today. You have to. It's important that the stage directions should be included in the monologue because the teacher can have the option of swapping monologues with students. If somebody writes a monologue, they could another lesson, which I did not include in here, but it's a suggestion that teacher can swap monologues. So it's important to write stage direction so that the people know what to do when they're saying that line. Walk across the room and look out the window type of thing. Finally, criticism. Since they will be giving feedbacks to their classmates' monologue, it's important that they understand the difference between constructive criticism and negative criticism. So here I suggest that the teacher download theater reviews or movie reviews. I would prefer theater reviews since it's a theater curriculum. Theater reviews, and so that you can show the difference between negative criticism and positive criticism. Because we don't want to say, oh, I didn't like that. That doesn't help. But saying something, I didn't understand when you said this, or I got what you said that, but then you said something different. This kind of criticism is going to help the students build a monologue better and more interesting. And it will it would also help the people who are criticizing. It will give them language to use to help their classmates succeed. Lesson 5.3 and 5.4 are monologue rehearsal. Again, here the students get to rehearse the monologue for the class, receive constructive criticism from their classmates, and incorporate that criticism into the second rehearsal. And finally, the last lesson in this unit is the monologue performance. And this is the summative assessment for the entire unit. And here the teacher will assess the students on how well they incorporated all the stuff we've talked about, all the character traits, how well they incorporated the feedback or the criticism from the previous 2 rehearsals, and how effective is their monologue, and is it believable? That's the most important thing. Is it believable? Do you believe the character? Do you believe what the character is saying? And finally, the budget, cost, and evaluation plan. Everything that I found, all the information that I found here is free on the internet. The only cost is for the 70 hours that I put into this curriculum at $30 an hour. That would be $2,100. And finally, the evaluation. They're both informal and summative evaluation, and they're both noted in each lesson and in each unit. And I describe how the final assessment should be. My biography, this is my last course for my MA TESOL at UMBC. I also teach adults part-time. I've been in theater I've been a theater stage manager for 25 years, working on Broadway, off Broadway, and Baltimore Opera Company. I got my MFA from Rutgers University, Mason Gross School of the Arts, in stage management, where I also studied directing, acting, and playwriting. So I do consider myself a well-rounded theater scholar. Finally, references. Teacher resources, all free, all noted in the formal proposal. And this is a monologue I created. I'll leave you with this. It's important for students to know that a character doesn't necessarily need to be a real person. It could be an imaginary thing. For example, I created a monologue about a rock, and how a rock is tired of being stepped on and thrown, and wishes he were a mountain so that he could put his head above the clouds, and people wouldn't step on anymore, and they would have to climb they have to work hard to climb to get to the top of his head. So I've included 2 original monologues in this curriculum just to give the students an idea, and also to show them that the teacher is also involved, and I think that's very important. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed my presentation.